There are moments in life when your heart just breaks, and you realize the world keeps moving, completely indifferent to the pain inside you. I had loved, I had lost everything, and I thought I would never get back on my feet. Yet, the moment I saw my best friend laughing with the man I once called mine, it hit me. Life doesn't stop. It keeps flowing, relentless, and you only have one choice: to let go of the past or be dragged under by it every morning. I woke up with a heaviness I had never known. The sunlight streaming through the blinds didn't warm it, only highlighted the emptiness in my chest. Gregory, I still remember his eyes, his smile, the promises that had once felt unbreakable. And Tammy, my childhood best friend, the person I had trusted more than anyone, somehow became the source of an ache I couldn't name. In those first days after everything fell apart, I lived in a loop of memories, pain, and futile attempts to forget, only to be pulled back into the past. Every image, every word, every little gesture felt like a knife slicing through me. I asked myself, over and over, can I ever move on? There was no answer, at least, not yet, but flashes of happiness kept sneaking in, fragile as candle flames in the dark. We had laughed through whole nights, raced through the park, whispered about first crushes, shared small dreams of youth. Gregory had made me feel safe, alive, loved. I remembered those afternoons walking hand in hand along the lake, thinking the world existed only for us. And then there was Tammy. Her gaze during those days I was with Gregory had been friendly, curious, a subtle warning I had never noticed. I had trusted her completely, believing she would never betray me, but the truth was far harsher than I could have imagined. Every time I saw them together in my mind, my chest tightened as if it would collapse. It wasn't that I didn't want them to be happy, it was that seeing the love I had poured into Gregory now belonged to someone else left me nearly breathless. I kept telling myself, this is what comes from blind trust and youthful naivety. Life went on around me, indifferent, while I lived in long, grey stretches of monotony. I went to work, came home, repeating the same mechanical motions. Everything felt meaningless except the constant ache in my heart. Quiet dinners alone, wandering empty streets at night, felt like I was living in another world, one where happiness and security had abandoned me long ago. One time, I caught a glimpse of Gregory laughing with Tammy through a cafe window. My heart froze. Jealousy, heartbreak, helplessness all coiled tight in my chest. I knew I couldn't intrude on their happiness, yet the pain wouldn't release me. I sat there, silent, trying to breathe steadily, trying to convince myself I was okay, while every muscle screamed the opposite. One evening, I stood on my balcony, staring at the city lights glittering like scattered stars. The cold wind carried the smell of fallen leaves and distant chimney smoke. I wondered, can I ever love again? Can I smile again? Or am I doomed to live in this shadow? Memories of Gregory and Tammy surged back, sweet, yet excruciating, nearly knocking me off balance. Every promise, every hug, every moment I thought would last forever had ended. I had to stand on my own, even if I didn't know how. That night, I cried for lost friendship, for love turned to dust, for the person I once trusted fully who now felt so fragile, yet amid the pain, a small part of me still yearned for life. I realized that if I stayed trapped in the past, I would lose myself completely. I walked through the park, feeling the crisp autumn air on my face, the crunch of leaves underfoot. Something about the rhythm of the world reminded me, life keeps moving, and I have to find a way forward, one painful step at a time. I started keeping a journal, pouring out every memory, every ache, every thought about Gregory and Tammy. At first, the pages were soaked with tears, but gradually, writing helped me see myself more clearly, a woman who had loved, had lost, and was beginning to learn how to stand up again. The next day, I realized life would not wait. Tammy was carrying a new life. Gregory was preparing for fatherhood, and I had to find my place in the world again. The gap between past and present felt sharper than ever. I understood that if I wanted to live, I had to face my pain, learn to forgive, and take one step at a time toward reclaiming myself. It wouldn't be easy. Every step felt heavy, every moment a reminder of what I had lost. Yet from that loss, a story began, story of resilience, forgiveness, and self-discovery. The journey would be long, messy, and raw, but also filled with hope and the possibility of growth. After days swallowed by grief and memories, I began to realize one thing. Life doesn't wait for anyone. Tammy was pregnant, and Gregory was stepping into fatherhood before I even had a chance to figure out how to reclaim my own life. I found myself standing at the edge between past and present, between pain and curiosity, between jealousy and gratitude. I decided I wouldn't disappear from their lives, but I also wouldn't intrude on their newfound happiness. I went to Tammy's doctor appointments, not out of curiosity or malice, but because part of me wanted to witness the miracle of life, even if it reminded me of my own losses. Sitting in those stark, brightly lit rooms, holding Tammy's hand, watching the tiny flicker on the ultrasound screen, I felt a lump rise in my throat. It wasn't sadness, it was a sadness sense that life persists even through the shattered pieces of the past. I remember the first time I saw that heartbeat. The rapid, insistent rhythm was a reminder. The world keeps moving. No matter how much you've lost. Tammy looked at me, a faint, warm smile on her face, and I realized our friendship had changed, but it still existed. It wasn't perfect, but it had endurance, the kind only forged through surviving storms. We were no longer carefree girls, running through sprinklers or laughing through sleepless nights. We were women who had endured, lost, and were learning to stand on broken ground. Every day with Tammy made me more aware of the distance between us and Gregory. At first, even the smallest glance or gesture from him would leave me breathless. Watching him care for Tammy, anticipate her needs, laugh with inside jokes only they understood, stung a mixture of jealousy and pain. I had imagined that this would never happen to me, that my love would remain intact, that we would build a life together. But everything had changed. I had to learn to observe without participating. Sitting in the living room, watching Gregory brush Tammy's hair from her tired face, I realized the pain didn't vanish. Immediately it softened, faded into a bittersweet ache. Slowly, I could watch their happiness without feeling abandoned. It was like looking at an old photograph that used to make me cry. Now it brought both nostalgia and a quiet smile. One autumn evening, Tammy and I sat on her balcony. The city lights twinkled below, the air smelled of fallen leaves and distant smoke. She placed her hands on her growing belly, feeling the baby kick gently. Steam rose from our teacups into the cool air. After a long silence, she turned to me. "Do you think we could start over?" I looked into her eyes, the same eyes that had once made me feel both love and resentment. Took a deep breath. I realized we couldn't go back, but from here we could move forward. "No, Tammy, we can't start over, but we can continue. From here, Tears welled in her eyes, and this time I couldn't hold mine back. We hugged for a long, uninterrupted moment, not to erase the past, but to acknowledge it, accept it, and understand that cracks in friendship don't always mean it's broken. Sometimes they are proof of resilience, of surviving the storm. After that moment, I began to rediscover myself. I signed up for a painting class I had postponed for years. Colors and brushstrokes on blank pages slowly filled the emptiness in my chest. I traveled alone, wandering unfamiliar streets, breathing in freedom I thought I'd lost. I wrote endlessly, sketching memories, recording emotions, both confessions and discoveries. In those pages, I saw myself clearly, a woman who had loved fiercely, been hurt deeply, and was learning to let go, forgive, and embrace life. One morning sunlight poured through my apartment window, and I looked in the mirror, seeing someone transformed. I was no longer the girl clinging to a lost love, no longer just a loyal friend who had stood beside Tammy through storms. I was all of that, and more, a woman who had survived, grown and chosen herself amid chaos, heartbreak, and friendship. The future remained uncertain. I didn't know when I might love again, or if someone would make my heart race once more. But this time, I would enter love with open eyes and a strong heart, ready to survive if it faded. I had learned that love isn't ownership or certainty, it's presence, care, and choice. And I was ready to embrace it without fear, obsession, or clinging to what cannot be held. Life with Tammy and Gregory continued, and I witnessed moments both ordinary and extraordinary. Tammy's laughter spilling over when Gregory told a joke only she understood, the gentle way he brushed her hair back, the quiet triumph of her first steps into motherhood. I was present for these milestones, not as a shadow of the past, but as a witness to growth, change, and the beauty of life moving forward, scars and all. I found joy in small things, morning runs through parks blanketed with amber leaves, quiet nights writing or painting, afternoons spent cooking new recipes, and laughing at our clumsy attempts. Each day I learned to let go, find strength in vulnerability, and embrace happiness that didn't rely on someone else's choices or dreams. One vivid morning, I walked to the lake near my apartment. The water mirrored the clear sky, calm and unwavering. I sat on a bench, watching ducks drift lazily across the surface, thinking of all the years I had clung to the past, holding on to Gregory. A friendship stretched to its limits, a version of myself that no longer existed. In that moment, I exhaled, feeling the weight of grief lift slightly. I realized letting go wasn't about forgetting. It was about honoring what had been and fully existing in the present. As autumn gave way to winter, I continued to grow. Tammy's belly swelled with life, Gregory adapted to fatherhood, and I adapted to my own life, free from jealousy, bitterness, or longing. I discovered resilience I hadn't known I had, and strength that surprised even me. I allowed myself to laugh again, without guilt. I allowed myself to imagine new beginnings, new friendships, new love, and new adventures. After months of quietly watching Tammy and Gregory, observing their lives unfold day by day, I realized the ache in my heart hadn't disappeared. It lingered, threading through quiet moments, but this time I saw it differently. It was no longer resistance, jealousy, or bitterness. It was a signal, a reminder to confront my past and slowly learn to move forward. Memories came rushing back, like a relentless river. Afternoons in the park with Gregory, Tammy's laughter spilling out during childhood secrets. The days when the three of us believed friendship and love would last forever. At first, each memory tightened my chest, leaving me breathless with grief. Gradually, I began to understand they weren't meant to hurt me, but to teach me the value of every experience. Every emotion I had lived through. One evening, alone in my dimly lit apartment, the soft yellow light fell on pages of old journals scattered across the floor. I read entries written in the rawest hours of heartbreak, each word a sting. And then I realized something crucial. I had been ignoring my true feelings for too long. I had tried to bury the pain, filling the emptiness with work, travel, or watching others live, while forgetting to face myself. I began rewriting my story, not as a victim, not blaming others, but as someone seeking understanding and forgiveness. I wrote about Gregory, about Tammy, about myself. I wrote about disappointment and quiet tears, but also about warmth, laughter, and fleeting moments of beauty. Slowly, something miraculous happened. The pain softened, making room for peace and compassion. One winter afternoon, I walked through the cold streets, wind biting my face, leaves rustling beneath my feet. I realized I was ready to let go of the past, not forget, but stop letting it control me. I thought of Tammy and Gregory and felt something new. No jealousy, no bitterness. I truly wished them happiness. My chest felt lighter, as if the chains of old sorrow had loosened. I understood that forgiveness wasn't for them, it was for me. It allowed me to release the burden and move forward. I faced my flaws, selfishness, envy, clinging to the past. I wrote them down, observing honestly, without judgment or shame. Each page lifted a small weight from my shoulders. When I accompanied Tammy to her appointments, I no longer felt ache or helplessness. I saw the light in her eyes, the life growing inside her, and understood it was a miracle not just for them, but for me as well. I learned to celebrate their joy without losing myself. Friendship, love, and loss were all part of life. They didn't cancel each other out. One morning, standing in front of the mirror, I gazed into my own eyes and saw someone transformed. I was no longer the naive, vulnerable girl. I was no longer powerless, watching life from the sidelines. I was whole, capable of love, capable of forgiveness, deserving of my own happiness. I smiled slowly, fully, and for the first time in years, felt at peace. I invested time in what I had neglected: painting, writing, solo walks, reconnecting with old friends, learning new skills. Each step became a journey of discovery, each discovery bringing freedom and lightness. Growing up wasn't just about enduring, it was about embracing life, loving yourself, and forgiving the past. Days passed. I watched Tammy's belly grow, Gregory learning to be a devoted father, and I watched myself evolve. I laughed more, slept peacefully, and imagined new beginnings. Friendships, journeys, opportunities I once thought had vanished forever. Life never stops opening doors. Every choice creates a path forward, a chance to live fully. One afternoon by the lake, the winter sky mirrored in still water, I remembered the past without pain. Wounds no longer controlled me. Love and friendship remained, teaching me how to truly live. I exhaled, feeling a lightness spread through me. Letting go and forgiving wasn't loss, it was self-love, a way to embrace life fully. Finally, I knew I was ready for a new chapter. I didn't know what it would bring or who I might meet, but I knew I could stand tall. love without fear, and welcome life's surprises. I stepped out of winter with a lighter heart, a peaceful soul, and faith that life, despite its challenges, remained beautiful and worth living. After learning to forgive and let go, I felt a strange emptiness within me, a space no longer filled with pain, but also not bound by old attachments. It was freedom. For the first time in years, I realized I could choose myself first, prioritize my own life, without worrying about anyone else's expectations or judgment. I started with small, meaningful steps. I signed up for classes I had always wanted to try: painting, photography, even yoga. Each class became a journey of self-discovery. When I held a paintbrush, I wasn't just adding color to paper, was painting my soul. Each piece became a reminder that I could create beauty from my experiences and emotions without needing validation or approval from anyone. Solo trips became a habit, an essential part of exploring myself. I wandered through unfamiliar streets, small towns where life moved slowly, and I realized that these quiet moments allowed me to hear my own voice again. I walked along beaches at dawn, inhaling the scent of salt and sand, feeling freedom spread with every step. No one was waiting for me. No one was watching me. There was only me and the vast, open world before me. While rediscovering myself, I also began opening my heart to new relationships, not to replace what I had lost, but to learn to trust and connect again. I met new friends through classes and creative clubs, people who didn't know my past, and we built connections based on honesty and the present. We shared stories, laughed, and sometimes cried together. I realized new friendships could be just as profound, but lighter, freer, and without pressure. One Saturday afternoon, I joined an outdoor painting workshop. Sunlight poured over the cobblestone street, golden leaves drifted lazily to the ground, and the serene environment made me feel like I was living inside a painting. Looking around, I saw others immersed in colors and shapes, and I suddenly realized that life still offered endless opportunities to explore, to love, and to feel. I smiled, not a forced smile, but a genuine one from the heart, of feeling I thought I had lost forever. On this journey, I even began dating for the first time in years, not out of urgency or desperation, but with curiosity and openness. I met different kinds of people, adventurous, thoughtful, humorous, each encounter teaching me something new. Sometimes my heart fluttered, but I learned not to rush, not to cling. I simply enjoyed each moment, each conversation, each glance, and each time I discovered more about myself, what I wanted, what I liked, what scared me, and what I truly needed. Work also became part of my path to freedom. I challenged myself with creative projects I had once been afraid to attempt. I wrote, designed, and even organized small workshops for the community. Every small success filled me with pride, and every failure became a valuable lesson. I learned to stand on my own 2 feet, confident and independent, without needing anyone else to define my worth. Yet, this journey of freedom wasn't all sunshine. Some days, loneliness crept in, memories of the past resurfacing, reminding me of lost love and friendships once tested. But now, I had tools to face it. Writing, talking to friends, walking, or simply breathing deeply and reminding myself that being alone wasn't a failure, was part of growing up. Each encounter with solitude made me stronger, more self-aware, and more resilient. One spring morning, I decided to join a mountain climbing course. Standing at the base of the hill, looking up at the blue sky, feeling the wind on my face, I realized freedom is like climbing a mountain. It's not only about the destination, but about the journey itself. Every step, every breath, every moment of pushing past your limits. Returning from the climb, I sat by the window, watching the city awaken. I remembered the painful days, the months of longing and nostalgia, and I felt an unusual lightness in my chest. I knew I had traveled a long path, from pain to forgiveness to freedom, and now to discovery. I had learned to live for myself, to treasure connections around me, and not be bound by the past. The most important realization in this journey was understanding that freedom isn't just doing what you want, it's knowing what you want and daring to choose it. I learned to say no to things that didn't add value, and yes to new opportunities, even if they were challenging or risky. I learned to trust myself and understand that everything I had experienced shaped me into the person I wanted to become by the end of spring. I had found my own rhythm, creative, energetic, free, yet deep and emotionally connected. I could look in the mirror and see a strong, independent woman who loved herself and was ready to love others when the time was right. I understood that life isn't always easy, but challenges, failures, and moments of solitude all teach us how to truly live, love, and grow. After months of living for myself, embracing freedom and self-discovery, I felt my heart opening in ways I had never imagined. There was no fear, no worry that joy would be shattered, was ready to welcome new possibilities. And then love returned, but this time it was different from before. This love didn't arrive like a storm, sweeping me off my feet, nor did it make me lose control. It came slowly, like morning light filtering through the trees, gentle, yet unmistakable. I met Ethan at a creative workshop where we were learning photography together. At first, he was just a classmate, modest, quiet at times, but always with a smile that made me feel safe. We began talking more after class. There was no rush, no pressure, just easy conversations about life, passions, and sometimes the challenges we'd each faced. I found myself wanting to share things I had kept hidden even from old friends. And Ethan, with his quiet attentiveness and sincerity, made me feel seen and understood. One afternoon, we strolled through the park as spring transitioned to summer. Sunlight filtered through the trees. A gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers, and we walked in comfortable silence, occasionally smiling at each other or simply listening to the world around us. I realized that love doesn't always need grand gestures. Sometimes it's just presence, companionship, and the sense of safety someone brings. Ethan was unlike anyone I had met before. He wasn't impatient, didn't push me to feel instantly, and didn't test my heart with emotional games. He was patient, gentle, and always made me feel enough without needing to change or prove myself. And that's what allowed me to open my heart to love without fear, to trust that love could be a source of strength rather than a burden. Of course, life wasn't only beautiful moments. Some days, I felt anxious, wondering if I was trusting too much, if my heart was strong enough to avoid being hurt again. Memories of past pain and broken relationships surfaced. But instead of running or bracing myself, I faced these feelings. I shared my fears and past experiences with Ethan, and he listened without judgment, without dismissal, only understanding. That understanding made me feel safe and stronger. Alongside love, I maintained my independent life and creative passions. Painting, photography, and writing remained places where I could express myself freely, channeling emotions without restriction. and Ethan never encroached on that space. Instead, he encouraged me to grow, explore, and enjoy life on my own terms. One evening, we sat on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker in the night. I realized I was laughing genuinely from the depths of my soul. I remembered the painful days, months filled with longing and regret, and now felt an incredible lightness knowing my heart had healed. I understood that true love isn't possession or controlled companionship, respect and trust. In the days that followed, I learned to balance love with my own life. I didn't give up my hobbies, I nurtured friendships, and I didn't lose myself in the relationship. Ethan and I explored the world together, yet each of us retained our personal space, respecting freedom and individuality. I learned that true love is complementary, not replacing. It's a partnership, not a burden. With Ethan, my heart opened wider, but also grew stronger. I realized that loving without fear doesn't mean the heart won't ache, means having the strength to rise if it does. I loved myself enough not to depend on love, enough to face challenges, and to grow alongside the person I chose. Through this journey, I also recognized the value of honesty in every relationship. Friendship, love, even moments of solitude all contributed to shaping the person I had become. Every experience, fleeting or enduring, carried its own meaning. I began to cherish every moment, every breath, every laugh, and every challenge life presented. Finally, one summer morning, I stood on the balcony, inhaling the warm air, watching the city wake up. I felt a sense of completeness and wholeness in my soul. I wasn't perfect, but I was whole. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I was mature enough to face it with courage and an open heart. Love, freedom, and true happiness were no longer distant dreams, they were the reality I was living, day by day. Summer had passed, and I realized that life wasn't just about beautiful moments or new experiences. It was also about hard decisions and inevitable turning points. I found myself at a crucial crossroads: how to preserve my freedom, nurture love, and shape my own future all at once. Work demanded one of the most pivotal decisions. After years of freelance creative projects, I was offered a chance to collaborate on a major endeavor, something I had long dreamed of but always feared. I wasn't ready for. It was a turning point, a chance to open doors to new opportunities, but it required my full energy, focus, and dedication. I weighed the choice carefully, reflecting on my values and the life I wanted to build. Through those contemplative days, Ethan was always there. He didn't push or pressure me. He simply listened and asked gentle questions that guided me toward my own answers. "What do you really want?" he asked. It wasn't just about work. It was about life, happiness, and trust in myself. After all I'd been through, I realized the answer could come only from me. I wanted to challenge myself while maintaining balance with my life and love. So I chose to accept the opportunity, not out of obligation, but because I believed in myself. Meanwhile, my relationship with Ethan entered a new, deeper phase. We spent more time truly understanding each other, not just enjoying comfort and fun, but exploring values, perspectives, and long-term goals. We discussed finances, family, careers, and dreams. I realized mature love isn't only about feelings, it's about understanding, respect, and building a future together. One afternoon, sitting by the lake, sunlight sparkling across the water, Ethan said, "I want us not just to share the present, but to build the future together." Looking into his eyes, I saw sincerity and commitment, and my heart stirred in a new, steady Wayne, not the fleeting infatuation of the past, but a deep, enduring connection. Still, doubts lingered. Could I balance a demanding new job, a growing relationship, and my personal freedom? I used to fear that one misstep could ruin everything. But now I had grown. I knew how to set boundaries, prioritize wisely, and most importantly, trust myself. Each challenge was an opportunity to prove my resilience and capability. My friendship with Tammy and Gregory remained steady but required delicacy. I learned that friendships aren't always perfect, and sometimes distance is necessary to protect both the bond and yourself. Tammy was entering a pivotal stage of motherhood, and I was there as a friend, present but unobtrusive, ready to support without overstepping. I found joy in witnessing her happiness and in recognizing my own growth, loving without being entangled. One evening, in my warmly lit apartment, watching the city glow, I realized life is a series of choices. They aren't always easy, but they shape who we are and define our happiness. I learned to listen to myself, accept risks, and take responsibility for my decisions. Work, love, friendship, and moments of solitude all found their balance. Growing up didn't mean giving up dreams or emotions, it meant integrating everything harmoniously. I also understood that no one else could define my happiness. True freedom is the ability to choose your own path. Then, on an autumn morning, standing on the balcony, I inhaled the crisp air. Golden leaves drifted lazily, sunlight filtered through the cityscape, and I felt a sense of completeness in my soul. I knew I had matured strong enough to face any challenge, confident enough to embrace new chapters. Happiness was no longer distant or elusive. It was the reality I was living, a balanced blend of work, love, and personal freedom. Life would still bring surprises and difficult moments, but now I knew I could meet them head-on. I could love, work, create, and live fully on my own terms. The choices I made today would open doors for tomorrow, and I was ready to embrace everything with an open heart and resilient spirit. Autumn had passed, and I felt clearly that life is truly a long journey, not just a series of fleeting moments. I had grown stronger and more mature, but the most important lesson I learned was that true happiness doesn't come from dramatic events or luck. It comes from how we live each day. Every single moment, my work continued to expand in ways I had never imagined. The big project I had accepted earlier became a pivotal point, bringing not only personal achievement but also connections with talented, creative, and passionate people. I learned how to manage my time, handle pressure without losing control, and most importantly, maintain my creativity and personal identity. Every small success became a motivation, and every setback was a valuable lesson. I realized that happiness in work isn't about perfection. It's the joy of progress and creating something meaningful alongside my career. My relationship with Ethan grew deeper and more stable. We learned to support each other through challenges, whether it was work pressure, life changes, or simple but meaningful everyday moments. One evening, while cooking together in our warmly lit kitchen, I realized that mature love is found in simplicity, quiet gestures of care, understanding without words, and the unspoken connection that sustains us. Ethan became more than a partner. He was an inspiration, someone who made me feel secure, confident, and alive every day. I also spent time nurturing myself and my other important relationships. My friendship with Tammy had changed over time but remained strong. We were no longer carefree young girls, but our bond had deepened based on understanding, respect, and shared experiences. I learned that friendship isn't always about constant proximity. Sometimes it requires flexibility and trust, allowing each person to live fully while remaining connected. One winter morning, Tammy and I walked through the park where we used to play as kids. The last leaves of the season drifted gently, the cold breeze brushed our faces, and we talked about life, unfinished dreams, and how each of us was finding happiness in our own way. I realized that happiness doesn't always come from grand gestures. Sometimes it's in the presence of a close friend, in laughter, in genuine sharing, and in the quiet understanding between two people. Throughout this journey, I continued to cultivate my creativity. I wrote in my journals daily, painted, experimented with photography, and participated in community projects. Each activity brought a sense of fulfillment, helping me connect with myself and the world around me. I realized that art was not just a career or hobby, it was a way to understand myself, to heal, and to live fully. Life also brought new challenges, but I faced them with confidence and maturity. When a project hit obstacles or plans didn't go as expected, I no longer panicked or doubted myself. Instead, I assessed the situation, learned from mistakes, and found ways to improve. I saw that lasting happiness isn't about avoiding difficulties, it's about how we handle them and grow through them. One day, Ethan and I went on a mountain hike. We walked along trails covered in golden leaves, laughing, talking, and sharing peaceful silences. In that quiet moment, I realized that true happiness is balance between love and freedom, work and personal life, joy and challenge. Everything merged together, creating a life that felt complete and meaningful. I also began to think about the long-term future, not just my career or love, but the legacy I wanted to leave. I wanted to live a meaningful life, inspire others, and leave positive marks behind. Every decision, from work to relationships, was carefully considered, guided by core values and the maturity I had gained. One evening, standing on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker below, I felt a rare sense of peace. I was no longer afraid of the past, anxious about the future, or dependent on anyone else for happiness. I realized that lasting happiness is the ability to live fully in every moment, to love, to create, and to preserve personal freedom. Life continued at its own pace, but I had learned to move with it confidently and gratefully. I laughed more, created more, loved more, and savored each moment. I had become a mature, independent, happy, and whole woman, strong enough to love and free enough to live as I wished. And when spring returned, I stood before the mirror, smiling gently but full of vitality. I knew the journey wasn't over, but I had learned how to move forward with faith, love, and maturity. Life, with all its colors, challenges, and joys, was now mine, and I was ready to live every moment fully, writing my story with intention and completeness. Spring had returned, bringing fresh light and a sense of new beginnings. I realized that all the years of growth, challenges, setbacks, and joys had led me to this moment, the moment when everything began to harmonize perfectly. Work continued to offer incredible opportunities. The big project I had taken on had now reached its final stages, and I was entrusted with leading a small, creative team. In the beginning, I worried whether I was capable of managing and guiding others, but gradually, every meeting, Every idea discussed helped me grow more confident. I learned how to combine leadership with sensitivity, not only to achieve results, but also to respect and nurture the potential of each team member. Long meetings, difficult decisions, and occasional stress all brought a sense of fulfillment. I realized that true success wasn't just about outcomes, but about the journey growing, learning, and creating alongside others. The work was demanding, but it also brought a sense of exhilaration as I watched my ideas come to life, appreciated and embraced by others. Each step forward was proof of perseverance, learning, and the ability to push beyond my limits. I began to understand that happiness at work wasn't about fame or recognition. It was the joy of living my passion, creating value, and witnessing daily progress. Alongside my career, my relationship with Ethan had grown deep and stable. We had faced enough challenges to understand that love is not just an emotion, it is companionship, understanding, and mutual support. One afternoon, while tending a small rooftop garden together, Ethan looked at me and said, "I don't need tomorrow or even the future to know I want to be with you." The simple words, so full of meaning, made my heart stir. I realized that true stability and love is what matters most. I felt love not only in words but in the smallest gestures, random hugs, gentle care when I was tired, or simply him listening to my trivial daily stories. My friendship with Tammy had also entered a new rhythm. We were no longer carefree young girls, but our bond had deepened more than ever. We shared joys and sorrows, future plans, and personal worries. One day, Tammy invited me over to help prepare a small birthday party for her son. We laughed, decorated, cooked, and talked as if no time or distance had ever separated us. I realized that lasting friendship doesn't have to be perfect. It only requires love, understanding, and acceptance of each other through all stages of life. During these peaceful days, I also devoted time to self-care. I tried morning yoga classes, attended creative workshops, and often went for solo walks to reflect and recharge. Moments of solitude were no longer empty, they became times to listen to my body, mind, and heart. I realized that sustainable happiness doesn't come only from others or external achievements, but from the ability to connect with oneself. One evening, as the city lights flickered on, Ethan and I walked along the river. The glow from the buildings reflected on the water. The breeze carried scents of flowers and damp earth. We held hands in silence, feeling closeness and peace within. I realized that these simple moments, the genuine presence of someone beside you, were the most precious things in life. Work, love, friendship, and personal life gradually harmonized naturally. I learned to listen to my body, mind, and emotions. Every decision, every action was carefully considered, yet free of pressure. I understood that fulfillment isn't about achieving perfection, it's the sense of completeness that comes from living honestly with oneself and in harmony with what exists. Unexpected moments also appeared, making life richer. One morning, while sipping coffee on the balcony, I received a letter from an old friend, sharing the challenges and joys they had experienced. The letter not only reconnected me with the past, but also reminded me that every experience, whether joyous or painful, holds value and shapes who we are today. During this period, I also learned to accept small losses. A project that didn't go as planned, a delayed plan, or minor misunderstandings in friendship no longer lingered in my mind. I realized life doesn't need to be perfect. It only needs to be whole in its own way. And when you approach everything with gratitude, Even difficulties become meaningful. One quiet weekend morning, Ethan and I prepared breakfast together on the balcony. Sunlight filtered through the trees, the aroma of coffee filled the air, and birds sang nearby. I looked at Ethan, feeling the warmth, peace, and genuine love we shared. I knew that this was the moment I had always longed for, the combination of love, career, freedom, and inner happiness. Finally, I stood before the mirror, smiling softly but with full confidence. I realized that this journey, with all its challenges, joys, sorrows, and love, had shaped the woman I am today, a mature, independent, happy, and whole woman. I had learned to live each moment fully, to love and let go, to create value, and to cherish the simplest things. Summer returned, bringing new rhythms of life. I was ready to step into the next chapters, no longer fearful or uncertain. I understood that happiness isn't just a destination, it is the journey, the way you love, live, and experience life. And I had learned how to live my own life fully, honestly, and with fulfillment. With a peaceful heart and a steady spirit, I felt ready for any challenges and opportunities ahead. I knew that whatever came my way, I would continue walking forward, savoring each moment, appreciating those around me, and exploring new dimensions of myself. Summer was gradually winding down, but the intensity of emotions in my heart was hotter than any season before. The months of peace and growth had prepared me for the ultimate test, the stage where every feeling, decision, and relationship would be put to the test. It all began on a light, sunny morning when I received a message from Gregory. He wanted to meet me for one last conversation, something I had been avoiding for over a year. Part of me was terrified, afraid that his presence would reopen old wounds, afraid that emotions I had so carefully stitched back together would unravel. But deep down, another part of me longed to confront the past, to know that I had truly grown and could face it with composure. We met at a small cafe, sunlight streaming through the windows in long, golden streaks. Gregory arrived, thoughtful, yet carrying that familiar charm I had once loved. The moment our eyes met, memories surged, laughter, anger, promises, and heartbreak. My heart raced, but I inhaled deeply and smiled different from the smiles of years past. This one was calm, grounded, and mature. He began speaking about Tammy, about the months he had spent preparing for fatherhood, and about the way he had learned to love without possession. I listened without jealousy or pain. Instead, I felt understanding. His love for Tammy and her son was real, and I accepted it without resentment. I realized that growing up wasn't about abandoning love, was about learning to love without binding, learning to let go while still cherishing. We talked about the past misunderstandings and grievances that had kept me awake many nights. For the first time, I didn't cry, didn't get angry. I listened and responded with calmness and gentleness. It was extraordinary. No more pain, no more wounds, just peace and gratitude for the lessons that had taught me about myself and love. After that meeting, I walked alone through the park. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the trees. The breeze brushed my skin, and I felt complete freedom for the first time in years. I understood that facing the past didn't weaken me. It made me stronger, more confident, and more capable of loving myself fully. Yet the emotional climax didn't stop there. Ethan, the man who had always been by my side, realized I had reached a turning point within. One evening, as we prepared dinner together, he took my hand and said, "I realize that you're not just the woman I love, but the truest companion in my life. I want us to move forward together, no matter what comes. His words choked me up. I realized that true love isn't just passionate stability, trust, and the willingness to face life's trials together. My friendship with Tammy also reached a new depth. Late one night, when she called me over, I realized her son had said my name for the very first time. That moment made me cry, not because of a simple word, but because I felt the unbreakable bond woven by time, trials, and even pain. Friendship was no longer childish games or empty promises. It was presence, companionship, and unconditional support. In the following weeks, I spent much time reflecting on myself. I wrote daily in my journal, recording thoughts, emotions, and lessons drawn from love, friendship, and work. I realized that true happiness is the ability to love without dependency, to let go without pain, and to grow without losing oneself. One day, Ethan and I climbed a small hill near the city. From the top, looking down at everything, I could feel my life as a whole, career, love, friendship, and myself all balanced and harmonious. I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready. I had learned how to choose, how to love, and how to value what truly matters. The climactic moment came when I realized I was completely free. I was no longer bound by the past, no longer afraid of loss, and no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. I loved Ethan, I loved myself, I cherished Tammy and her son, and I knew that everyone in my life held a special place. No one could replace anyone else. That evening, with the moonlight spilling into my small apartment, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the city sparkle. I felt an unprecedented sense of fulfillment, a calm heart, a clear mind, and deep faith in the future. I realized that the journey of love, friendship, and personal growth never truly ends. It continues, every day, every moment. In that moment, I understood that all the losses, wounds, anger, and regrets of the past were not failures. They were lessons, opportunities, and the foundation that shaped me into the strong, whole, and happy woman I am today. I knew life would still have its fluctuations, but I was no longer afraid. I had learned to love without possession, to let go without pain, and to live fully in each moment. Most importantly, I understood that the most important relationship is the one with myself. From that foundation, I could love, support, and create value for everyone around me. Autumn had returned, but this time it was no longer the color of regret or emptiness. Everything around me radiated life, as if reminding me that life always goes on, and everyone has the chance to write their own story. I stood on the balcony of my apartment, taking a deep breath of the crisp yet refreshing air, feeling every rhythm of life passing by, every soft sound of the city below. Ethan stood beside me, holding my hand gently yet firmly. His eyes looked at me with love, not possessive, only present and supportive. I smiled, realizing that this was the feeling I had always dreamed of, a love steady, peaceful, yet warmly passionate. We didn't need fancy words or distant promises. Just being together, sharing each moment, every joy, every challenge, was enough. Tammy and her son remained an essential part of my life. I watched her care for her child, teaching him simple but invaluable lessons, and I felt the pure happiness radiating from her eyes. Our friendship was no longer filled with conflict or jealousy, but deep understanding, where everyone could find comfort, share openly, and gain strength to grow. One morning, I decided to walk around the nearby lake. Sunlight filtered through the trees, the water mirrored the clear sky, and I felt complete peace. I sat on a wooden bench, closed my eyes, letting the breeze brush against my skin and the sounds of nature soothe my soul. The years of heartbreak, shattered love, and seemingly insurmountable losses, all of it had become precious lessons, teaching me how to live fully, how to love, and how to grow. Work remained busy, but I no longer felt pressure. I continued creative projects, led my team, and watched my ideas come to life. Every success, every failure, I approached with gratitude. I understood that life doesn't need to be perfect. Fulfillment comes from how we love, learn, and live honestly with ourselves. One evening, Ethan and I prepared a small dinner at home. We laughed while cooking, playfully dropping ingredients, and then enjoyed our meal under warm lights. I realized that true happiness lies in these simple moments, unpretentious, unshowy, yet full and complete. I also devoted more time than ever to self-care. I joined painting classes, took long walks in the park, kept a daily journal, and occasionally treated myself to short trips exploring the city and nature. Every action, every experience helped me connect more deeply with myself, to recognize my own value, and appreciate those around me. One late afternoon, Tammy invited me over. We decorated her home for a small party celebrating her son's upcoming start in kindergarten. We laughed, reminisced, and I felt the warmth of a deep, unbreakable bond. I realized that true friendship is standing beside each other through all changes and challenges, while still treasuring every shared moment. The climax of my life was no longer about painful events or complicated emotions. The climax now was inner peace, the ability to love and let go, to understand myself and others. I had learned to make choices, to love, to live, to grow, and to be happy. I realized that every experience, good or bad, had shaped me into the woman I am today, a strong, independent, happy, and whole woman. One evening, Ethan and I sat on the balcony, looking down at the city shimmering with lights. I felt the pulse of life, the breath of myself, and the one I loved. I knew that the future would still hold challenges, but I no longer feared them. I was ready to move forward with a calm heart, a strong spirit, and deep gratitude in that moment. I understood the most important thing. The greatest relationship anyone can have is with themselves. When you know how to love, cherish, and understand yourself, all other relationships, love, friendship, family, become richer and more meaningful. I understood that happiness isn't about finding the perfect person or avoiding pain. It's about living fully, valuing every moment, and creating meaning from your own heart, outside. The autumn leaves were turning into winter, thick on the streets, crisp and fresh. I breathed deeply, smiling, feeling life flowing fully through every beat of my heart. I wasn't just existing, I was living. I hadn't just survived challenges, I was growing. I wasn't just loving others, I had learned to love myself, and in that perfect moment, I knew I was truly ready to embrace whatever the future held, with an open heart, a strong spirit, and happiness in every moment. Life is a beautiful, chaotic, unpredictable journey, and now I knew how to walk through it with confidence, love, and completeness. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and smiled peacefully. Everything love, friendship, career, self had woven together into a complete picture. I felt fulfillment radiating throughout me, from my heart to my soul, and I knew that no matter what tomorrow might bring, I would continue walking forward with faith, hope, and happiness in every single moment, and I was ready.